Welcome to Symposium Books Continuing Author Series. Today, I'm really happy and thrilled to be welcoming Ray Choi, who's going to be in conversation with yours truly to discuss their latest novel, Contemporary Loner. Contemporary Loner is an experimental novel that follows basically like the stream of consciousness, meanderings, and everyday encounters of a transphobic transgender author. It explores questions of identity, creativity, and gender, and those are just three. It explores many other topics. It's very, for a thin novel, it's very dense. It packs a lot. And in a voice that mixes humor with testament, Ray experiments with form and structure to create a truly unique reading experience. It's almost like, I was reading it, and it reminded me a little bit of like the experimental fiction of like Kathy Acker from the 80s, if anybody's familiar with her. It's kind of like collage a little bit, but also like very like in your like not subtle, and I like that a lot. So before we get into this discussing the book a little bit more, I just want to say a bit more about Ray. Ray Choi is an experimental writer whose books have been distributed through independent bookstores such as ours, online platforms, and public libraries. These books reflect their comedic voice that first emerged in performances at London pubs and US theaters. They have also produced video art, and they hold degrees from Maryland Institute College of Art in Baltimore and the Royal College of Art in London, and I've spoken at various colleges and institutions. And my name is Kimberly. I'm a PhD candidate at Southern Methodist University in Dallas. I fled Dallas because you don't want to be in Dallas right now. And my work looks at interethnic postmodern literature. Thank you. So we're going to start with a brief reading, and I will hand it over to Ray.
Thank you so much for that introduction. It was very thoughtful. Thank you everyone for coming. I'm just going to read for 10 minutes and then we'll get to the discussion. So here we go. I have to be the best animal first. Make sure all my hair is perfectly kept and so forth. I need to look like a zookeeper grooms me and funnel nutrients through an IV until they unchain me just because they quit their job to find something easier with higher wages. Then I can leap forward to the keyboard and begin generating literature of the finest quality. So that's where I am now, at the local store, writing. Very standard at first glance, but don't be fooled. The magic is in there. I feel it dripping down from my brain through my sinuses onto my tongue. I taste it, like the charming refined liquor in a rooftop lounge. It burns a little, but it's complex. That's just how truth is. It's what I think about while I'm walking down the street in the cold winter wind. I savor the pain of the chill and the sparkle of the ice, the workers shouting profanities at each other while salting the pavement. Their anger is as divine as the cross around some saint's neck, because it's from the here and now. It's what's hurting my ears at this very moment, the spattering of spit from their mouths onto my face as I stand in the way of their scuffle. It's the pain in my ankle from a collision with one of their shovels while flattered into the ground, half picked up by the wind like a broken sail. It is terror from the look of the neighbor who has opened their door in their long underwear, and now I've walked past this occurrence and on towards the art museum. I sit on a chair like a statue, and still as a rock I reflect on all of my genius decisions, the ones I make about the art events I plan. I curate the nightlife diligently. Ideally, the performer must arrive nude or wrapped in a garbage bag and display some animalistic actions, like crawling or drooling or screaming like a coyote in extreme distress. They should stare at the audience as if they'd either attack them, caress them, or both. And they should seem like they prepared meticulously for the performance in some way or another. Applied a bit of mascara or waxed their knuckles, or at least finished their morning stretches so they don't cramp up mid-grab. Meanwhile, I appreciate the onlookers' due diligence. They brought their sketchbooks and mechanical pencils to take reflective notes, and bouts of pain that catch them by surprise, and unexpected rabid animals that come whirling through an open window. In the middle of the performance, a member of the public should stand up and inquire, "Did you drunk text me last night? What did it mean? No response is necessary from anyone because at this event, everyone else is sober and respectfully mute, and the performer is deaf in a crazed frenzy. Here I am at the art museum, staring at the wall, envisioning such tragic beauty. Ha! I laugh. It's the best moment, right here and now, sitting beneath this multi-million-dollar arch. I roll around on the floor. Ha ha ha. I can feel dollar bills all around me. They're licking my sides like the tide of the ocean. It's luscious. Hold up. I stop to find the petrified look of the guard, grasp my knee and push myself to my feet. The currency has disappeared. The guard asks, "What are you doing there, miss?" "I am transgender." "Oh, sorry, I mean, what were you doing?" "I'm envisioning the future of this country. Do you hear the tip-tapping of the performers' shoes, their garbage bags rustling? It is a next-generation spectacle. Please lower your voice, miss. You're misgendering me. Please keep it down or you'll need to leave." The guard stares with wide eyes. I brush myself off and head towards the galleries. This space is crisscrossed by surveilling gazes. How can art exist in such prison-like conditions? I think I will leave as my lesson is coming up with the piano teacher. I open the door to the museum, walking into a breezy golden afternoon. I once heard about a woman who kept her door unlocked all the time as she trusted the universe. If I had a claw truck, I would rip off this one right here, right now. Grinning, I head up the hill to my settlement. In the distance, the teacher, hooded, waits for me beneath the tree. Reaching her face, I can finally make out her glassy, tired eyes. I observe, "You're on time." "I always am." "Why?" "For fear of what might happen otherwise." "Like what?" "Anything at all. It scares me, the universe." "The universe is meant to be trusted. I plan on ripping down my front door once I have a claw trap." "That's so stupid." "Come in. I practiced this week." "I can't believe it. You never practice." Inside we sit down and immediately the cats dig their claws into our thighs and shins. Once perched on the keys, they hiss and bite each other's necks. Clumps of fur waft in our faces. The piano teacher bats away the fur. "How can you handle these monsters?" "They're my children." After coughing on a strand of fur, the teacher replies, "Sorry." I remove the cats from the keys with a single plow of my arm. "It's okay. Most children are monsters. For example, all of the American ones." "Did you know children in certain other countries don't scream nor cry? What have we done to our children?" "I don't know. You're right, they're terrible. I try to teach them piano, but they never practice, and sometimes experience their screams, and when they cry, I cry too." I cross my legs on the piano stool. "You know, this stool is too big for me, and I'm not even a child. I'm coming to terms with the fact that short stature is a disability." "Do you get benefits?" "No, except children's things are cheaper in cost, so sort of. I could survive off of small treats and bib outfits if I really needed to." "Under what circumstances?" "If I quit my job." "What job?" "Oh, you don't know? I'm a curator of nightlife for the city." "Since when?" "When I realized this place has a shortage of performative spectacles, of screens, the artful ones." "What distinguishes an artful screen from one of an American child?" "The context of a gallery. And if you bring an American child into a gallery, it could be artful that the child would need to be screaming with such an intention." "Oh, I see." The piano teacher stands up. "Well, that concludes your lesson for today." "We didn't even play." "That's what you get. You booked me for 10 minutes. It's It's all I can afford with the change from the couch. That's all you pay? Yes. I tilt up the cushion. All that can be seen are a couple rubber bands and what appears to be a grated carrot. Upon closer inspection, it is an orange paper confetti from the carrot-shaped piñata. It brings to mind the celebration of my raw veganism organized earlier this year. It was the first day of my life since grade 2 that I hadn't eaten a stack of pancakes from the diner around the corner. I was crying streams onto the carpet, but the switch had to be made. I could no longer handle the pimples on the precipice of my chin. They had been popping up there for so long that they were becoming a sort of confetti. Some of them purple like varicose veins, some green from pus, some blue from the cleaning fluid that I scrubbed onto them in the laundry room, some red from blood. I turned to look into the mirror. My chin is sprinkled with multicolored dots, blemishes. It might be a year before they disappear completely, leaving behind the baby-like luster that I had so long ago decimated with that first shove of the greasy spatula. And the people who helped me celebrate the veganism have dispersed since that party. They are all in their respective au naturel nooks and crannies. Some are camping out by the abandoned train tracks where it's easy and free to grow string beans out of aluminum cans. Others are asleep in their wool blankets, dreaming about the ghost train that used to traverse those tracks. They sleep in lean-tos on the cliffs along Route 1. There they can survive off half-consumed juices tossed over the doors of convertibles from the fingers of wealthy women smacking their Botox lips. I'll end it there. Thank you.
Thank you. So one thing I think that reading does a good job highlighting is the voice of the narrator throughout. Very humorous. And it leads me to kind of my first question that we discussed a little bit before is, what's the relation, I guess, to one, the narrator's voice being humorous, and how does that play into the fact that they're a transphobic transgender author? Like, why would you choose to, I guess, narrate first person that way?
Well, thank you. That's a huge question.
Start off big.
Yeah, I mean, this book, it's personal, to be honest. Yeah, I've dealt with, internal transphobia as I've developed a more trans identity. I live in Philadelphia, which is, it's a safe haven for queer people and trans people. And so that my trans mask identity really, it's flourished there. But at the same time, like, when I cross the boundaries of that community, as other people, I'm sure, have the same experience. I'm pummeled with transphobia and being misgendered, and so every day I'm questioning my identity. I think about a lot of contradictions about, at the same time that we're fighting for rights for gender expression, there is also discussion about how gender is fluid, it's contextual, so it just makes me question, whether or not I should commit to a certain gender, like transition further, or even detransition, and that starts to creep into that territory that is considered transphobia, I guess, in my mind. And I would imagine, it's pretty common that people deal with internalized transphobia. So anyway, yeah, that's all kind of the crux of why I wrote this book, and the humor part of it. I come from a background of doing some comedic performance art in art school and in pubs in London and some theaters in Philly. I think it's super important to use humor to approach kind of like these dark existential topics, you know, and I do think that there is like a sense of goofiness in life as a trans person. Like if you're especially if you don't pass, and you're constantly being misgendered, it's like as much, you know, even though that can create a lot of distress, if you kind of look at the bigger picture and have compassion for the person who's being misgendered and the person who unknowingly misgenders them, like it's just the dynamic is just very goofy. So yeah. If that answers your
That does
question.
answer my question, yeah. Because it is like, especially if you're dealing with it like constantly, like it just kind of becomes like the absurdity of it, like the whole bigger picture. Like there's an absurdism, I think, like in the voice too, that you play with a lot. And there's like, that kind of leads me to the next question. It's the quote that you use from Julie Fox. So this book is very intertextual and has footnotes, and will cite other sources, lots of like streams from like Buddhism going through it too, which I might bring up a little later. But I'm just gonna read a quote that's on page 46, it's from Julie Fox. It reads, "I always tell people, like, be delusional. Like anybody was delusional, you know. Like they did not calculate what they were. Like they just believed in and they became it." So I guess like kind of like you kind of touched upon it, like the narrator is basically like having like this inner conflict throughout of like grappling of like, you know, what's my trans identity, what is my identity, and then like how does gender actually work, and like should I detransition or not, stuff like that. And I guess like what role does illusion actually play in the book? And did you focus on this like theme particularly in relation to transness, or was it just like a bigger picture thing too?
Well, I mean, it's hard to say. You know, I didn't like conceptually plan out the book. You know, it's very much a stream of consciousness approach. But I love that quote from Julia Fox, and yeah, I think she's great. And I just love thinking about delusional thinking, because on the one hand, you know, delusional, like that obviously can be like a derogatory term for anyone, especially for trans people. But on the other hand, Julia in this quote seems to believe that delusional thinking is the source of power, of strength, of agency, and so it's a way to kind of like leave a place you don't want to be and progress and advance to somewhere else. And so I think it speaks to like that dichotomy of the word delusion, kind of speaks to like the double-edged sword of life as a trans person.
Yeah, and it makes me think of like there's John Oliver had a thing about like trans rights, and he was talking about like getting, you know, dead named and stuff like that, and it was talking about like, well, we all agree to call like the guitarist of like U2 The Edge. He wasn't named The Edge. Like we all agree to do that as a culture, but we can't do that for trans people. And so like it's kind of like talking about like how, I guess too for me, like how delusion kind of plays into like self-actualization for not just trans people but for everybody. So like to use that term delusion on trans people is very transphobic and weaponized, but you like invert it by using it this way, which I really appreciated.
You can thank Julia.
I will thank Julia. Yes. All right, and then there's another thing that you bring up like throughout. It's this idea of like being plastic and pure versus being pure. There's a lot of like small dichotomies throughout the book, and throughout you like kind of mention how we're all essentially like made out of plastic. Like I think you mentioned like actual microplastics throughout, because we literally are like inhaling 68,000 microplastics a day. Yay, love capitalism. Why were you preoccupied with the nature of artifice in this book? And like, what does it do for you as in the narrator? Like, why do you want to explore that?
Artifice, it's another great word. You know, and it makes me think of like, plastics, plastic surgery, hormones, a lot of medical interventions that are used to visually transform your body, and that all kind of ties into like more overarching subjects that are also, it's just a very controversial realm, like medically transitioning, like it ties into big pharma,
10 minutes.
you know,
We want to get over there early.
plastic surgery. I mean, that's always been like a touchy, like a charged topic, like in Hollywood. And so it's because of all of the controversy around that subject matter, it appealed to me because conflict, I mean, I love a good conflict and trying to depict, a conflict, and I think that's part of why I'm a writer. Yeah.
So part of like, you talked about a little bit of like how it's very much stream of consciousness, but it also seems like to be very organized in a certain way. Like, I know like throughout there's like, you do some stuff with like temporality and time and place, where it's like, if we didn't have certain signposts, it becomes very like, almost like dreamlike, and you're like, where am I located? Am I in the museum right now? Am I in like my bedroom looking up at the ceiling? Am I imagining like different alternative worlds? And I'm just wondering, how did you approach like form for the novel? Because there's no chapter breaks and stuff like that. There's like page breaks and stuff like that, but no chapter breaks. And like, why did you choose to like, I guess, write it and then edit it this way?
Yeah, well, basically the process is divided into 2 segments. So half of it is kind of like this freewheeling stream of consciousness prose, and then the other half is like copying and pasting bits and pieces from my journal. And so, yeah, it's really, and even with the prose, like I would sit down and have like a writing session and then leave and come back with a new idea and just like hit the ground running. And I think like, yeah, it's all very much about those shifts in reality and setting, and like the presence of characters, the behavior of the characters, because I think that's kind of my strength. I think in previous books I was more focused on like just maintaining a continuous narrative, but I kind of stepped away from that and tried to defy conventions around chronology and setting a little bit more.
And do you think, did you do that on purpose? Because you talk about like throughout how time is not linear and it's cyclical, so like it kind of like the structure of it while you're reading it, and it's just one book, so you can read it in like 2 days, and like I recommend like reading it like longer sessions, because it gives you this kind of like experience that like almost like you're, because it's the first person, you're kind of like, your brain's like mimicking like how the narrator's thinking, and it does go like in like cyclical time, so we'll like all of a sudden be shifting back to the museum, or we'll be shifting to like another character like Lasso throughout, and so like I know like a lot of my trans friends always talk about how like, you know, time is cyclical and non-linear, and did you do that structure on purpose to make it like evident? Because it's really, really cool actually.
Thank you. I mean, you know what? Yeah, it wasn't super purposeful. And yeah, I think at times I was convinced that it didn't make any sense, you know, and but I think one of the best outcomes of the book for me was that I would, you know, pack all of this content in and, you know, just go for it, and then I would hand it to my editor, George, who an amazing editor, and like they would be like, yeah, they would piece it together and it would make sense to them, and it was kind of a humbling experience because it showed me that like even though I felt like my thoughts were just wandering afar, like it actually, they were not so severely dispersed that it was just completely illogical. Like there are clear limits to my mind as with anyone, and so it kind of speaks to how like we all have a lot in common psychologically.
Yeah, because like a lot of like sometimes that the stuff that would be like, I think I know what you're kind of thinking about, where like you think like it's like, oh, does this seem like really far out, like it's nothing to do with what's going on, but it's like very much like how our minds work in terms of like, oh, I have ADHD, so I'm gonna have a random ass thought out of nowhere while someone's talking to me and then not know what the hell they're saying. So it's kind of like that, and you have a lot of like interjections with exclamation marks that are like, excitement. So I like that. And so, like, I guess another question I have is like, because it's so slim and it's very intertextual and dense, why did you decide to include like footnotes, secondary sources, and what did they do? Like one thing I was thinking about was like Buddhism throughout, and how that kind of is like a running thread throughout. And it comes basically from footnotes and seeing the sources that you cite, but also it comes through like the cyclical nature of like time and existence that is in the book. So yeah, kind of wondering like what was the purpose of that? Because like I'll bring up Kathy Acker a lot because like I'm obsessed with her work, but basically she never gives credit ever. She just like plagiarizes and then puts it in. So why did you decide to actually give credit? Yes.
Oh my gosh. Well, yeah. Well, I love that you bring up Kathy Acker because she's so cool.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah. So yeah, thank you for making that relationship, that correlation. That's flattering. But I just think that like the crux of art making, it's really about like the artist is embedded in a society and a culture, and they're kind of unearthing truths that can be talked about and related to. So like as much as I was actively processing certain ideas as I was writing, I've been aware that those ideas are not mine. Like they were already in existence, and I'm just kind of like this meat processor or something, and I'm taking it and processing and emitting material that's already there. So I'm like acknowledging that mechanism basically.
Yeah, that makes sense. And okay, so like I guess another thing that I'm thinking about too is purity. Purity comes up a lot in the novel. Like the narrator would be like, water is pure, and then go on like a little like diatribe about purity or all that. What's the role? Like, why is Buckwheat? Buckwheat is the name of the narrator, by the way. Why does Buckwheat mention how certain objects and things are pure? And what role does that play in the novel? Because you play with it a lot, and I feel like there's some irony going on there.
Yeah, for sure. There's some irony there. Yeah, I mean, I feel like the author, a lot of the time they feel kind of like this dirt bag, like living in this filthy, polluted world, and they're kind of searching for like a higher place, and they're primarily doing that through spirituality. And so yeah, what else can I say? It's there is a lot of irony though, because yeah, it's just at times impossible. But meditation, which the narrator is really into, it appeals to them because they are they can do it alone, and it's something that you can do it anywhere, and then they inhabit kind of the fringes of society, so it works for them. Yeah.
And I'm gonna say sorry because this is not one of the questions I sent to you, but it leads to the question of, because we're talking about like isolation and being alone and why meditation is really important to the narrator, and so the novel is called Contemporary Loner. So I'm gonna ask about that. Why would you call it Contemporary Loner? And yeah, I guess that's my whole question.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I don't think there's really that much to say about it. I mean, I think it just felt right. I don't know if there's much conceptual thought behind it, but
Do you see the narrator as a loner?
oh yeah,
Yeah.
definitely, yeah, clearly. And I have thought about the fact that, you know, transness has been around for a long time, so it's not necessarily a contemporary, you know, topic, but this character is inhabiting the here and now, in the present day, so it's that intersection, and I feel like, yeah, these are super, like widely discussed topics right now, like the loneliness epidemic, transness, queerness, things like that. So I thought it seemed appropriate.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna ask one more question, then I'll turn it over to the audience. All right. So, which passage gave you the most difficulty writing? And what were like the sections that required like more revising than others? Basically.
Okay, yeah, the first half, I would say I edited like more repetitively, and then as you go on, I kind of start to lean more into the process and just trust it, and basically, you know, that's just how it came about. I didn't really plan to do it that way, but I also hope that it speaks to the state of the narrator's sanity, which is kind of like unfurling as you go along. So maybe that's like a connection between the style and the experience of the character. Of course, yeah, thank you.
Of course, yeah. I'm gonna turn it over. All right. I do have more questions, so if people don't have questions, don't worry. But yeah, anybody in the audience have questions?
Yes.
So I haven't read Contemporary Loner.
That's okay.
But you're talking a lot about how like parts of this were taken from your journal. And then you're also talking about Buckwheat as the narrator. I'm just like really curious about how like you deal with like being the narrator, or like how much of you is the narrator and how much is not, and how you kind of play with that, and like what allows you to like kind of push yourself further versus like, I don't know, how you might just like be contained and be like, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
That question is actually something I expected to be asked, so I'm glad you asked. I'm not sure if I have, I'm trying to think if I have a good answer for it, but basically this is my third book, and the last two were less personal and less related to my life. So I feel like I'm gradually kind of like unveiling myself, and like it just like eventually it'll just be like a memoir or something. But this one is it's very much kind of like anything that's about myself is intertwined with just prose that I wrote that's fictional, or you know, a lot of what I took from my journal is like dialogue that I had with friends, and then I gave them a different name and made sure that they weren't identifiable. It's a great question. Like I wrote this book from a place of like emptiness and loneliness really, and I really realized that, you know, if I want to find my true place in the world, like I have to build it myself, and the foundation has to be like on top of kind of my idiosyncrasies, and so that's kind of what's happening.
I love that. Yeah. The weaving kind of your own place, or like, yeah, it's really neat. Cool.
Thank you.
Read it.
Anybody else?
You were saying it's kind of like a lot of like stream of consciousness writing, and runs from your like it's like it seems like an unusual process. Were there certain things that surprised you as you were writing them, or like parts of the process that worked in a different way than you would have expected?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, like I was saying, I just, you know, I would write something and then come back and write something else, and then keep doing that, like just write in like fits and bursts, and then it really surprised me that when I just pushed it all together into one block of text, it still made sense, and I didn't have to do a lot of like stringing and, you know, stringing things together. So that's probably what surprised me the most. Yeah.
Did you always have the title in mind? Did you have an alternate title while you were writing on this one? And like, maybe what was the process on maybe contemporary?
That's so interesting that you guys are just inquisitive about the title. I mean,
We live together. She's been hearing me talk about it all week.
The other title I was thinking was Islands in Artifice. So, which there's no islands, there's no actual islands. So I felt like that was probably a more appropriate title. That's all I have for you.
Thank you.
Do you have any other questions?
Can you ask what the name buckwheat, where that came from?
Basically, well, I eat a lot of oatmeal, but they were gonna be called oat, but I changed it. Why did I change it? I just wanted something slightly less corny, even though buckwheat is still corny. I'm relieved that you said that actually. Thank you.
Okay, I think that, any other questions or? No? No? Should we wrap it up? All right. Awesome. Well, thank you for coming out. Thank you, Ray, for coming all the way to Providence from Philly.
Of course, my
And
pleasure.
would you be willing to sign some books?
Yes, I would.
Awesome. All right. So yeah, Ray Gold, sign books. And if you haven't already, I highly recommend buying it. It's on the counter in the back. Yeah, and thank you for coming out today.
Thank you.